Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. On today's episode, my guest is Zedd. Zedd is a Grammy-winning producer, DJ, and songwriter who has made a huge impact on the electronic and pop music world. We're going to talk about his songwriting, his sound design, and how he produces hit songs that get billions of streams. If you don't know Zedd by name, you may know one of his songs.
If our love is tragedy, why are you my remedy? Baby, why don't you just meet me in the middle? I could give a million reasons why, but you're going, and you know that.
Here's my interview. Anton, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're already having a conversation here,
right,
so
I
we're just
forgot.
going to continue this. So songs can go viral at
Yep.
any time, which is what you're saying there. So talk about that for a second.
I mean, I guess how we started talking about this is I was curious. You said your daughter, who's 12,
Yeah.
knows my music. And I was wondering, how does a 12-year-old get exposed to my music? Because I have sort of different fan bases, right? I have a fan base that knows me through my more pop songs that they heard on the radio or at Target. I have my EDM fans who see me at EDC or see me at Ultra Music Festival, which is 21 plus, which your daughter is obviously not part of. And then I have sort of my music fans who just like me for the music itself. They have never seen a show, they connect with the music. And then obviously there's people who somehow find me on social media, but I'm not very active anymore. So I wonder, like, how does somebody who's 12 years old find my music? Where?
It's interesting because I wonder how they find so much different music and they recognize so much different music. When I play any of your songs, so I'm listening to your songs in the car driving her to school, and she knows every one of them.
That's crazy.
Right? And it's like, where do you hear this? Well, she's not on TikTok, so it's either on, it's pretty much only on YouTube Shorts because she doesn't, Instagram's not really a place that you go to discover music.
No.
So they use that for a certain thing, kind of like I use my Instagram for its own thing. It's more like just to see what my musician friends are doing.
Yeah.
And to me, Instagram is where musicians are, right?
And cool tools for drum kits.
And cool tools for drum kits. So I was just saying, whatever camera I'm looking at here, that Anton was just playing my drums and that I had this dampening thing on there, and he goes, Instagram? I was like, yes, how'd you know? It's like, because we get served the same.
Absolutely. I get the same kind of drum ads, and I'm glad you have it, so now I know how it sounds. It actually works pretty well. But it's fascinating. I mean, your point is a great one, right? People make videos about their life or create content, and they look for an emotion to sort of be the background to it. And then they will choose a song. I don't know if they heard it. If you click, and I'm not an expert, I really am not a social media expert, but you click on add music and it already sort of gives you a suggestion.
Yeah.
Maybe they just click on it. And sometimes when I was uploading my own stuff and I want to add a song to it and I type in Zedd, it is like, use Happy Now.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm assuming you know better than me, so I use Happy Now. But maybe this is how people discover songs, and things are just so different.
As far as music discovery, do you use Spotify, use Apple, use a bunch of things, Tidal? What do you use?
For discovery or for listening?
For listening.
For listening, usually Spotify. And discovery, I wish I had a better answer. I don't discover much music. Like Dave, my manager, sends me a lot of the stuff that I end up really loving and diving really deep. Like The Olam is a band, for example, that Dave sent me a song. I look at it, it's, I want to say 7.5 minutes. And Dave was like, when you have a long ride, like you're driving somewhere, listen to this. And so it was in my phone, and I was in the car, I was driving, and I remembered, there was this song Dave told me to listen to, and I click on it. It was a song by this band, The Olam, which I had never heard before. And I was just like, high, listening to this music. It's like, this is so amazing. It gave me some Radiohead. It gave me some Irish influences that I really don't like. I don't like Irish music. I don't like pipes. It's not my thing, but I loved it. It's like, this is amazing. Like anything that can make me love something I don't like is amazing. I would love to love everything there is. That's my goal. I would love to love blue cheese if there's a recipe for it, right? But like the more I can love, the better my life gets. And so all of a sudden this band made me love instruments and a type of music I never liked before. DJs that send me records that are unreleased is probably my number one source of discovery, and a lot of Instagram videos. Now, I know we said it's not really like a discovery tool. Well, actually, it is a discovery tool.
It's a discovery tool for me, for musicians playing short-form content.
Right, that's true. I see a
Yeah.
lot of that content, which is cool. And then sometimes I will see a random video pop up. I saw this video of a kid playing the song in front of maybe 20 people in the snow somewhere, and I loved it. It was a Vivaldi like techno cover.
Okay.
And so I just reached out to the guy, and I was like, this is awesome, I'd love to play it in front of 30,000 people tomorrow. That was a discovery. Or like, I just get random videos from people that have sometimes like 50 followers. I don't even know if they consider themselves musicians or if that's just a hobby at this point. And I see a video, I'm asking if I can play that song, I get the song, and then I play it in my sets. So a lot of the discovery happens this way, and I just have my artists that I really love playing their music that inspire me. And when they work on songs, even if they're not done yet, sometimes they will share early versions of it. I add my own stuff to it, and I just play it out live for a little bit. They get a little bit of feedback. They change the song. So that's kind of my way of discovering. But I am not as good as, for example, Medion is a great example. He told me he listens to music. It's like an exercise. Like I go to the gym, even though I don't want to. He will listen to music even though he doesn't want to, because to him it's like input you need to feed yourself, which I fully agree with. He's right, and I should be doing better in that regard. But just listening to, it could be a playlist, New Music Friday, you name it. I'm sure a lot of people do, but find your playlist that you enjoy and maybe just run through it and listen to it. I don't have a good tool for that, but I feel like we briefly touched on AI. I'm sure AI will be very helpful to curate the music that I want to discover for me personally. But I need a good way to discover music. It used to be SoundCloud for me, a lot of SoundCloud. Not so much anymore.
Before we go any further, I want to quickly interject that 57% of you watching right now are not subscribed to my channel. So please hit the subscribe button now. Thanks.
I watched you playing with John Mayer at Coachella, and I knew that you were a drummer. You played in metal bands in the past. And so I assume that you played in drums when you were a kid. Would you start on piano?
I started on piano, and at the age of 12, I wanted to do the exact opposite of what my parents wanted me to do, which to me led from classical piano to metal drums, pretty much. So 12 years old is when I started playing the drums.
And then did you immediately start playing in bands? How long did it take till you did that?
Yeah, it was right away. Basically, I was playing classical piano. My brother started with violin and then started playing guitars. And I was 12, he was 15, and we were like, let's start a band. Great, I'll just pick up the drums because we don't need piano in the band. So I had this amazing experience. I love to tell the story because it's really like life-altering for me. We grew up pretty poor and we never had a drum kit. I've never had the chance to try it. I've always wondered what it feels like. I've only ever played piano. So I went to this local drum store in Germany, in our town, and I just asked, would it be okay if I tried to play the drums? And they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Like, gave me sticks, and I sat behind the drum kit, similar to our conversation. Like, the kit was way too high, my foot barely touched the pedal, and I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, okay, this makes a lot of sense. This seems to be easier than piano. I'm good here. And so I just started playing the drums in the band from that moment on. It was like an instant switch. I obviously still played piano and wrote music on piano, but my main instrument became the drums in my band with my brother as a necessity, if you will. I then slowly transitioned into doing electronic bits in our metal band.
Okay.
Like a lot of bands, Muse as an example, we grew up on Muse, right? They always have electronic elements, and I always wanted to know how that works. So I just kind of read my way into it and did a little bit of that.
Would you have some programming and then you play to a click or something like that?
No, we never had a click or playback or anything.
Okay.
It was just always live completely, but on our records, we would have some electronic elements, and I was usually the one programming them.
Okay.
And so I had a little, inclination to the electronic side of this world. Then I also used to be, and still am, a huge gamer. So at some point, I wanted to be able to make music on the road, meaning a laptop, and be able to game. So I saved up all my money, and I bought this laptop that at the time was supposed to be my gaming anywhere I want, making music anywhere I want.
Okay.
The gaming part just didn't work out. In retrospect, I understand the refresh rate was wrong. it was not powerful enough. So I was like, no more gaming, music only. And I spent my extra hours making electronic music as a joke on the side, nothing really serious. I wasn't even into electronic music. I just really, like we mentioned earlier about coffee, I wanted to know everything that there is to know about it. So I started getting really into making electronic music, and people started liking it before even I liked it myself.
Okay.
I liked making it. and then the Zedd project just took off so fast. I couldn't even like react to it, that, you know, I signed with my agency, with my management, with my team, and I was basically gone. Touring, DJing, barely coming home to Germany. And so the drumming part was laying dormant. I didn't even have a drum kit until very recently, at the very later stage of Tell Us, of my last album, because I needed to record something that the plugins couldn't do. You know, a 90-second long crescendo on the drums where you don't hear the step up in the velocity. And so then I really loved playing the drums, so it kind of brought the itch back. The whole Tell Us album is so acoustic, and I replaced most cymbals with live cymbals in the last stages anyway. We kind of were thinking internally how to even perform some of these songs live when it came time to actually play them. So we were like, we could try this drum moment, which obviously is in me because I've loved playing the drums, but I haven't done it in a long time. And we were gonna see how people would react to it in an EDM setting, and the feedback was amazing. Like, everybody actually in the EDM world talked about the drums, which was really surprising to me. So we were like, okay, we'll do it throughout the whole tour. So then this became like a moment that was like people most looked forward to it. It enabled me to do things I was never able to do before, like when we toured South America. When I want to play a song as a DJ, it requires me to ideally get the a cappella and the instrumental and like do my own thing to it, do a mashup of some sort, or remix the whole thing, which will take me, I don't know, a week. I'm not fast at producing it. I like to take my time.
Okay.
So if I want to play a song, that's not something I'm going to do overnight, likely. Now, with AI and being a drummer for a section, what I was able to do on my South America run is I download the stems in AI, I take the drums out,
Okay.
and I play it just like that. Super easy. I don't need to make a remix because playing live drums is sort of the energy that
That's
I
the
need to
remix.
do. That's the remix, so
Yeah.
to speak, right?
Yeah.
So that was like, wow, I can play a different song in a different language every single night.
Okay, so what do you use to make stems? What
Even
program?
better, I asked Dave because I'm too lazy.
Okay.
And I'm like, can you get me stems for this song?
Dave, what do you use?
Moises.
Moises, okay.
Moises.
Yeah.
So he sends me back the stems.
Yep.
I take out whatever I need to take out. I leave in whatever I need to leave in, and I just do a light mastering
Yeah.
so that they can sort of compete with the rest of the volume of my sets. And I play drums, and every night there's a different language, a different song, which is awesome. It's so custom to every single country I'm in. And so that really opened up our sort of thoughts of what we can and can't do. And then Coachella came around, which was like probably the most special 8 days of my life, because a lot of the people that got me into music or got me to want to do what I do came out on stage with me, which was so special. And we took it even further, besides playing like 3 rock songs with Incubus as a DJ.
Oh, that's right. I saw that. Yeah.
Which was so amazing, to having an actual orchestra and playing a classical song just at Coachella as a DJ. And the reception was amazing. For all the fear I had that people would be like, what on earth are you doing? You know, where's my 4 on the floor? Those moments went viral more than the others. So that was like such an amazing moment, because I realized that as a musician, if you do things that you genuinely love and that are true to you, you can deviate, you can experiment, and people will follow if it's good.
Yeah.
If you just do it to do it, maybe not so much.
Okay, so let's talk about some technical things. Like, what do you use? Cubase? What do you use to
I use Cubase to produce.
produce?
Yeah.
Okay.
So producing in Cubase, tracking vocals in Pro Tools.
Okay.
I still think it's faster
Yes.
and better for editing. And then as fast as possible back to Cubase. I've been on Cubase since version, I believe, 2.
Okay.
It's like 22 years. The very first
So you work
studio-
on a PC then, or you
on
work
a Mac.
You work on a Mac.
Flawlessly, yeah.
Interesting.
They used to be PC. Now it's perfectly flawless on Mac. And I actually think it's possibly the most powerful DAW out there. Very overlooked. Tons of incredible features. They had built-in Melodyne into tracks before I think any other DAW. Double click and change the note anywhere you want. Amazing, amazing tools.
I interviewed Hans Zimmer, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
think Hans uses
Hans is
Cubase.
on it, yeah.
Well, I think he used to use Nuendo.
That's the same
It's
thing.
the same thing, yeah.
Just the movie
but,
version of it.
It's interesting, though, of the film composers, Thomas Newman, I interviewed as well, but Tom uses Pro Tools. I think everybody, when they're tracking, if they're doing orchestra date or something, they're tracking instruments using microphones, they'll use Pro Tools, or to do vocals for comping and stuff like that. It's way easier.
Still
right?
feels like and they have the best stretch algorithms.
Yeah.
Pitch and time, X form. The way I do it personally is when I basically cut every syllable of a vocal comp, even the breaths, and everything that needs a minor stretch goes through X form. If that's not perfect, pitch and time, because that's sometimes better. If that's not perfect, then move back to Cubase, use the Cubase internal, and then there's obviously waves and other tools.
Are you running Pro Tools on the same computer as Cubase, or you have two dedicated
it's all on
computer?
my same MacBook.
So when you export things, what do? You just export the
24-bit wave. I'm still
24-bit wave.
24-bit.
Okay.
44.1.
That's what I use.
You don't hear the difference, was what you were going to say, right?
I'm
Because I will say it first, I don't hear the
Anton,
difference.
I'm 63, so I'm I like to think I have good hearing, but I'm
Yeah.
not going to tell you that I hear the difference between 96 and 48.
I'm sure there is a difference. I'm sure there is. The question is the amount of size you add, and considering the path that file will go down compressing its way into your phone,
Right.
that you listen to while you're brushing your teeth and the phone's in another room, is that going to make the difference? I just don't think it makes the difference for me. If I was to make a movie, I would probably do it in 96, maybe to make sure everybody has what they need potentially one day for whatever they needed. And I'm the same way. I think I have very good hearing. And to me, 44.1 is perfectly fine. And the file sizes are much lower.
When you get in Cubase, do you have templates that you use when you open it up? Or is every track when you start a new tune, do you start from scratch?
I do start from scratch. I used to have templates,
Yeah.
and the templates were, honestly, I started doing templates when I made my song with Disclosure. And they had a template that was really enticing, where there was like a clap track with a I think it's called claps, plugin, like your 808s, your most used things, so you can quickly throw them in. And we made that song, or at least half of the song, in like a couple hours. It takes me a couple hours to even think about whether the chords I wrote are correct or not. So this was like, wow, I could make 10 times more music if I had a template. So I started making a template.
Do you feel like it boxes you in a little bit?
It does. And it probably doesn't, but at least mentally it felt like, well, now I'm gonna grab that crash because it's right there.
Right.
Am I gonna go to my folder and look through it otherwise? So I did a couple songs with a template and I didn't enjoy it as much. So my only template right now is just all the inputs and outputs. So if I want to use a microphone, I don't have to actually set them. I can just hit table mic or whichever mic I need. That's the only sort of input and output list.
What kind of mics do you use for tracking vocals and things like that?
So, and I'm so bad with my equipment list, but I have a table mic. Dave, you probably know my equipment better than I do. We have obviously the Telefunken for like proper recording, which I'm not a proper vocalist, so I don't even use that mic.
Yeah.
I have one on the desk that's right next to me that sounds amazing for anything. Do you remember which one that was? It was a Sennheiser, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a Sennheiser.
I just don't know the exact model. I'm so bad with equipment. I have an engineer named Skinny who handles all that stuff.
Skinny?
That's what gave him, or John Mayer called him Tiny. So I might start calling him Tiny, but he does all my equipment or cabling, like labeling, inputs, outputs, so easy that when I get into Cubase, there's nothing I can mess up. It's just like, it literally says table mic. And I know it's that table mic.
Okay.
And booth mic. And like, makes it super easy for me. But equipment-wise, I have so little. You know, I have, everything's in the box. I use a lot of plugins.
Yeah.
Like external plugins outside of what Cubase comes with. But
For example?
I mean, Serum is probably an obvious one.
Yep.
Gladiator is an incredible synth. I can't tell you the exact reason why, but the highs in Gladiator are so gentle to the ear, whilst they're being still incredibly
Present.
Incredibly present. Like a good example I can give people who have heard my album Telos is there's a song called Sona, which is with the Olam, the Irish flute band, and it has these like drum accents. And a cool part about it is that there's no crash anywhere. you hear are just the sizzles of the synths that were Gladiator in this particular track. So it basically, when you listen to it, if you're a drummer, you listen to it, you're gonna play it like this, but I never had to put the crash in there. I never had to take any band of the frequency range away from what can be something else because the sizzle is bright enough to give you the illusion that it is a crash.
You were talking earlier about the phone and listening on the phone. This is what I was going to ask about. So when you want to hear something like bass drum, right? That if you're listening in front of 50,000 people, it needs to have a certain depth to it, attack, all this stuff. But to be able to be heard on the phone, it needs a different component to it.
Yeah.
So you have to find something that actually works for both. And
Yes.
how do you do that? Do you have multiple listening stations? Like what kind of monitors do you use? How do you actually decide these things?
This is a really tricky one, and I'll give you my honest answer that I don't love, but I know it's sort of the truth. To answer your first question is I have ATC in-wall speakers, which the in-wall version I love. The freestanding doesn't work for me. It's too sharp for me. So the kick drum is obviously the majority of an EDM song and translates the majority of the energy. Like a good example is, let's take Martin Garrix's Animals. Which that kick is sampled from another song. That other song where that's sampled from is already mastered. So you're taking...
That's right.
And who knows where that came from?
That's right, yeah.
So this is just an example because I know about this specific kick, right? So it came from a song, sampled, changed, went through multiple phases. Now, Animals, the drop, it starts with the first quarter note, is just the kick and nothing else. So you can go and sample your own kick drum.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't give it away for if somebody didn't know this, but you can just take that Animals kick, the first quarter note of the drop, and it's a clean one.
Yeah.
Right? And you listen to it on your phone, you're going to hear so many harmonics, so many notes in it. It's like, ooh, ooh. That's what the kick sounds like on your phone.
Yeah.
And even on your laptop, let's go up the device, right? You're going to hear that kick and be like, ooh, that is so distorted. It is way oversaturated. There's harmonics all over the place that you probably wouldn't find too pleasant. Then you listen to it on, let's say, my studio speakers. You're going to feel like, ooh, okay, I feel it in my chest.
Yeah.
It has a lot of rumble. I hear the harmonics. I don't know if it's that
But you
big
don't
of a deal.
notice them as much.
You don't notice them as much. And now you go up that next level, you go on stage, you play that kick, you don't hear the harmonics at all.
You hear them.
And it is amazing live.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of...
Well, that's why you hear the stuff on the small speakers. That when you hear those harmonics are there for hearing them on small devices, small speakers.
That's one way to think about it. But if you were to optimize your music to sound amazing on a phone, which I never do, but if you were to, you would definitely want to remove those harmonics because they don't sound too pleasant.
Yeah.
But when you make music too clean, in the EDM world at least, you play it out live, it just feels a little bit weak compared to the super, as I love to call them, compressed sausages that are like limited to death. I mean, dubstep is probably a better, or rhythm is a better current example of like maximizing every inch of your frequency spectrum, making things louder. Do you remember that Metallica album that was...
Saint Anger.
Yeah, Saint Anger. Like, you heard that and you just wanted like 4 dB less on the input for your listening pleasure. You're like, is that available? Until Guitar Hero had it. It's like, can I get the whole album this way? So it's a good example because to me, when they play it live...
40 dB.
You know, if they play it live, it's not going to distort, I'm assuming, and they don't DJ the track file.
Yeah.
So why was there ever a need for that? I get it. We talk about it, so it had something, some effect, right? With DJing, it's a little bit different. You can make your song a little bit louder, and people are gonna like it better. It's almost a direct correlation. So the loudness war, I would say, in my perception, is gone when it comes to like streaming services. I feel like there's good.
Well, they kind of removed the need for the loudness,
which is awesome.
Which is
love
great,
it, right?
Not only streaming. Well, yeah, YouTube even everything is self-leveling, and they.
I love that. That was so needed, in my opinion. We were heading towards
Absolutely.
a strange path.
Yeah.
Now, for example, Telos. I made my album purposefully a little bit less on the highs.
Yeah.
A little bit warmer and more full in the body because a lot of the influences and the music on Telos is a little bit like the music that influenced me, they didn't have those highs, or they at least didn't put them into the music. And it felt a little more mature and a little richer, and I wanted the sound to reflect that. So there's just a little bit less of that. But sometimes when I make edits to play out live, I will remaster them myself to sound the way that they need to punch live.
When you were performing Clarity live at Coachella, you silence the track and have the audience sing those lines.
'Cause you are. I wish. Chasing. Still fighting. I don't know why.
Is it just one button when you do that?
It's just, I have a filter.
You have a filter.
It's a literal filter, so you can.
So you actually just take it and you filter everything out.
So
and
there's
then,
a-
so it never loses the time, and then you put it back
exactly,
on.
and
Yeah.
there's a cue
Yeah.
and a filter.
Yeah.
So if
you're
I
like-
need, and then you bring it back.
Right.
And if the crowd is incredible, so loud,
Yeah.
I make the cue quite soft, because when you turn the filter down, it's pretty much silent.
Yeah.
If I feel like the crowd's good, but they need a little lift,
need a
then I
little
leave
help.
the cue up a little bit, and then the low end comes through, and it makes people sing a little louder.
Yeah.
So I just do, that's an easy thing to do. But in the background, the song continues.
Yeah.
And the time code continues with the song underneath it. Anything I play from my CDJs, which is the equipment I use on stage, also sends a signal to the lighting desk to run whatever I'm running. So if I loop something, because I want the crowd to sing, it will also loop the lights with me. So there's a repercussion in just, more than just the music by messing up.
Okay, so the first time I heard one of your songs was Clarity, and that blew me away. To me, that song has one of the strongest melodies of any song I've heard in the last 20 years. I think it's absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you very
Not
much.
only is the melody amazing, but the chord progression. That's a song that I can listen to, and if I'm playing, I can actually play it on guitar, right? If I'm... It works perfectly. It's beautiful on the guitar.
Thank you.
Right?
Well done, by the way.
And well, those are the voice. I was listening to it. I was like, okay, B flat minor 11. Then you got the D flat over E flat, and then F minor 7, C minor 7, D flat. I think you have the add 9 in there, and then goes to A
Occasionally.
flat. Occasionally.
Occasionally.
Every other time or so.
Every other time, yeah.
The thing about that song, though, is the build from the verse to the pre-chorus to the chorus is absolutely perfect. And the shape of the melody, it's an impeccable melodic shape.
Thank you very much.
To it.
I'll give you a little background story if you want to
Yes.
hear something crazy about it. Because, so the way the song started, way back in the day, was I was going to make a song with my friend Porter Robinson. We were going on tour together, and we kind of wanted to have a song together. So he flew in to LA. We spent 3 days in the studio, and our tour was called the Poseidon Tour. So we were going to make Poseidon. No idea what that's going to be. So we started playing around, and we wrote the chords on a keyboard. And we loved the chords. Then we started writing the chant melody. And we sang that in 100 times over.
How many people are singing that when you're doing that?
Between 3 and 4,
Okay.
just many times.
Yeah.
And then our photographer at the time, who was not a singer and could not hit the note, was kind of a critical part, because he was the...
Made it out of tune enough to sound like an actual
enough
crowd.
times, it sounds
Yes.
like a crowd.
Yes.
So we had people who could
For
sing.
the bad singers in the crowd.
Kind of
You
important,
need 'em.
right? You
You
do
need
need
'em,
them.
absolutely.
For anybody who does, I'm sure your viewers know a lot more about music than your average viewer, but to have a good audience chant, you need to be just as honest, you have to be off. So ideally, you
Yes.
record yourself with every form and variation you have in your throat, female, male, a little on, little off, little teeny, a little, every variation. So that was kind of the chant of Clarity.
Yeah.
And then the song didn't have a drop. We just got through, I want to say we were playing Coachella. I could be wrong. We were driving to a show, and I remember listening to the first 60, 75 seconds on my phone. I think I was playing it for you guys, and I was like, well, this is how far we were able to get. And then I lived in Germany at the time. Porter was in North Carolina, I believe. And I flew back to Germany, and I needed to keep working on the song because my album had a deadline, and I sort of had to progress on it. I had another song called Lost at Sea, which I just wrote the chords and produced actually the majority of the song out already, no vocal yet. Now what made Lost at Sea interesting is that the whole song is pretty much one chord progression. It doesn't go up and down much in energy and emotion from verse, the pre-chorus, the drop.
So for people that are watching this, because there's people that know nothing about EDM that are watching this, when you say drop, explain to people what that means.
So in easiest terms, the verse chorus of a regular song in EDM would be the pre-chorus into the drop. The drop is where typically your vocal gets cut out and it's instrumental and it's where people jump. That's the easiest way I can explain. It's like the climax in energy of a song, right? So oftentimes when we talk about writing electronic music, we have to redefine our terms because the verse starts, the pre-chorus is the chorus. It's the place where everybody sings.
Yeah.
And then the drop is where everybody goes crazy, where there's no more vocal.
Right.
So I was kind of under the gun to keep working on this album that I set myself, you know, a release date for. And this song, Lost at Sea, that had, which I love, it's very simple. And it needed a vocal that really will carry the instrumental because the instrumental doesn't change much. So it's one of those chord progressions where a vocal will dictate the direction of it. So I asked Matthew Koma to write a vocal for Lost at Sea because he's an incredibly talented writer and figured he would probably nail it. He wrote this vocal that came back to me, which is Clarity. Wow. And I listened to the vocal, which to me it took me on such a journey. And on top of Lost at Sea, which is one of my favorite songs I've ever done, but it just felt like they were mismatched. There was something that felt like the vocals way too big for a song like this plain, let's just call it, right?
Yeah.
So I said, this vocal is incredible, but it's not right for this track. I will one day make a song with it. Like when the time is right, it's an amazing vocal. So kind of forgot about it. It was laying around there in my sort of, I call it sample library of vocals. And I had made a drop. I sent it to Porter. This is for Clarity, sorry, jumping back to Clarity. I made the Clarity drop, sent it back to Porter. He loved it. And something in me, now we're like a minute and a half or 2 minutes into Clarity, we still don't have any vocals.
Okay.
So I just wanted to understand how a vocal will make me feel before I overproduce the song, before I add a bunch of things. I already had added so many counter melodies, which you hear kind of in the instrumental of Clarity when you take the vocal out. I didn't want to keep going, taking space away from a vocal, and then I'm almost working backwards. And then I like a vocal, and then I have to figure out what to take out. So before I went too deep on Clarity, I wanted to know, well, how would a vocal feel? So go through my folder. I was like, oh, I got this Clarity vocal. I'll just try this out. It was one semitone lower.
Okay.
So close enough, right? One semitone up. And this is back when Cubase had really terrible pitch algorithms.
Okay.
So one semitone, I felt like I can get away with that. So I put that thing in and I just listened to it. And like I had instant goosebumps. And there was like this moment of magic that almost made me cry at home in my parents' basement of like, there's just something just happened here. Like this is a magical combination. I was so excited. It was like midnight. I asked my friends to meet me at our high school. They all came in the middle of the night. I was like, guys, I think like I cracked the code. I think this could be it. And played it. They loved it. And I was so in love with this. You know, EDM didn't have much vocals yet.
Yeah.
This is before where EDM was super cool. Pop is not.
We're talking 2012, 2010?
I think, yeah.
Okay, 2010.
I think it was probably 2010, 2011.
I guess the
when I was
record
working
came
on
out
it.
in 2012.
Yeah, was
Something
it
like
12?
that.
Yeah, so 2011 is probably when it was, right? And I thought that the combination of this vocal that Matthew wrote and this instrumental that I made was just like magical. So I record a bounce of it and I send it to Porter and I'm like, Porter, I think this is like perfect. Like all it took was to chop a couple pieces off here and there because obviously it wasn't written for it. And like, it's basically perfect. And Porter was like, I like the vocal, but I just don't like how this feels on the song. And I think Porter was just going a slightly different direction in his career. He didn't necessarily want to get into the realm of big pop vocals on top of EDM music. And I really wanted to because like, I don't know, Phil Collins, you name it. Those artists really inspired me. They have very poppy sing-alongy vocals. So I really wanted to bring this world into me. So Porter at some point was like, just like do your thing with it. Like it can be your song. You know, he's still a writer on the song, of course. And like, we'll make another song together someday. So I was like, perfect. So now we just need to find somebody who can sing it in the one semitone up from there. And
Okay.
so we're really inching close to deadline. My initial wish was for Matthew to stay on the song, but that semitone up,
Made it impossible.
I think he could have sang it, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. I think he did it at some point. Later on when we did a live version, he sounded amazing with it.
Mm-hmm.
But he essentially didn't want to do that, and which is fine, but that meant that we needed a new vocalist. And Dave, again, my music discovery tool, sent me the singer Foxes. I was like, she's got an amazing voice.
Amazing voice.
So got in a Skype with her, talked about it, and then she recorded it and sent us the pool of vocals, and we were comping it for a couple days. I'm very, very particular when I comp my vocals. I really want their every breath to be at the perfect volume.
Yeah.
And that high note in clarity, that
Yeah.
really high note, we had one singular take because it was also a little too high for her.
Mm-hmm.
And she tried it once and was like, oh, it's a little too high to me, and gave me 49 takes of falsetto.
No, you need that full.
And that one you hear
Yeah.
is the one. Doubled with like
It's
the falsetto in
so
the
good.
background. It's powerful. It's really
Yes.
powerful. So a lot of coincidences had to happen for Clarity to end up the way Clarity ended up with that vocal in there.
Okay, so I'm going to play, just so people know, they're like, what? What are they talking about here?
I dive into frozen waves where the past comes back to life. Fight fear for the selfish pain, it was worth it every time. Hold still right before we crash, cause we both know how this ends. A clock ticks till it breaks your glass, and I drown in you again. You are the piece of me I wish I didn't need. Chasing relentlessly, still fight and I don't know why. If our love is tragedy, why are you my remedy? If our love is insanity, why are you my clarity?
Unbelievable. Okay, so I want to play so people can hear some of the things that are in this. So if I solo just the vocals and the main keyboard part, and I'll put the background vocals in too, so they hear that.
I dive into frozen waves where the past comes back to life. Fight fear for the selfish pain, it was worth it every time. Hold still right before we crash, cause we both know how this ends. A clock ticks till it breaks your glass, and I drown in you again.
We have these vocals, these crowd vocals that come in here halfway through.
Hold still right before we crash.
What is that?
That's our voices.
Is your
Just
voices.
And
Yeah.
then there's a plugin called Pulse Stretch. It's a
Okay.
plugin and a standalone.
Is that just two voices in unison with a plug-in or something?
I'm
Is it
pretty
just
sure
one
this
voice?
would just be one voice,
Okay.
but what this plugin does, it essentially lets you infinitely stretch anything you want
Okay.
to any percent. It's not like after you go more than 100% it starts being weird. You can stretch it, that whole bridge build up, the infinitely pulse stretch. So I just took each syllable that we recorded, like we recorded every syllable, every note in every syllable, and then kind of patched it together. So in the beginning, it's like dun 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 dun, dun boom 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 boom. Those are all just our voices, just in eighth notes. And then for the longer notes, I just loaded into pulse stretch, stretch it more than I needed, and then you chop as much as you need. And what pulse stretch does, it almost adds a chorus, which makes it stereo immediately.
Yeah.
And some shape, I don't know what voodoo is behind the scenes, but like you can just infinitely stretch something. It's so powerful. So anytime I need to go like 1 minute of a stretch of something on a tiny little sample, I always use pulse stretch. And so all those notes that you're hearing are individually stretched.
Okay, let me play the gang vocal here, the crowd vocal. What do you call it? A crowd vocal
I
here?
call it, yeah, crowd gang vocal.
Okay, so when I put that in with the bass, and then I put in the drums. What is the bass
The
there?
bass is a plugin called, I think it was called Ace. I don't really use it anymore. And it's awesome. It's got some really, really good sounds. I typically, when I make sounds, I love going through presets. I don't go there and start from initial and try to make my patch. I usually just cycle through presets until a sound inspires me to play something. So instead of like writing the perfect line for something like that, sometimes I will just go through it, I hear a sound, and it makes me write something differently. So in this case, I might have changed some of the bass notes to accommodate the now existing vocal.
Right.
Like I wouldn't say that it was exactly like that and I just throw the vocal on top of it, right? But this is as you can hear, everything besides the kick drum is sidechained.
Yes,
At least
everything's
a
sidechained.
little bit.
Explain sidechaining to
So
people.
essentially, sidechain means that whenever a signal happens, for example, a kick drum, everything else ducks for a split second and then comes back up. And you can visually line this up if you have if this was your, I don't know which camera is showing, but if this is your kick drum, then you would want everything else to go down for the duration of the kick drum and then come back up, which gives you this pumping effect.
Yes.
I don't like it. I don't like the pumping effect. So to me, it reminds me of a compressor that's just far too harsh, or a limiter that's just, in rock music, is far too harsh, and every time the drummer hits the kick drum, it's like whoop, whoop, whoop. I don't like that feeling, so that's why you will hear, I'm also going to give the most extreme example, would be Titanium by David Guetta. That sidechain goes down to 0 and then comes up really abruptly in a 16th note, 16th, or I believe so. It's like boom, boom, boom. Which is cool and gives you a really extreme effect. But to me, I've always tried to keep my sidechains just as much as they have to be to accommodate the space that the kick needs to be able to not distort the rest. So you will hear the chant vocals or the gang vocals, they're a little...
Slightly.
Even the bass is not that drastically sidechained, so just as much as I have to.
By ducking, which you could say that is, makes the kick actually have its full impact.
Exactly.
Right?
And you don't need everything on top of each other, because in electronic music in particular, the kick isn't like a bass drum where there's very little sub and then there's like your chest. The kick is everything.
Yes.
Obviously it can have an attack kick, a sub kick, and a body. Sometimes you will make your own kick this way. In this particular case of Clary, this is just one sample and it just has everything in it. So you need to accommodate the space so that it can punch through, have its attack, have its body, and then the rest comes in afterwards.
Now there is this arpeggio part that comes in, this fast arpeggio. I gotta find it.
It's in
here.
the second time.
Okay, what's the story with that?
So the reason this really stuck out
Because that's
to
not an arpeggiator, is it?
I never use arpeggiators.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
allergic
actually-
to arpeggiation.
Yeah, 'cause
like
that
you mean
doesn't-
the ones where you like draw, like you have 16 and you just draw them in and then it just replays itself? I can't do that.
Yeah.
It's way too much of a pain. I program everything just in MIDI.
Yeah.
When it comes to that.
And you figure out what notes sound good in what order, right?
And I mean, this is not something I played live. Like the piano I played and just recorded that in. This is programmed in, and so the purpose of this was to become a sparkle. A sparkle is like you never know where the next note comes from.
Right.
So if you write this down on a music sheet, it reads incredibly unintelligent.
Yeah.
It is like the notes feel like they were drawn in, and that's
Yeah.
sort of the design of it. If I had it programmed another way, I would have played the chord with all the notes and hit a randomizer in 16th notes and just randomly given me, basically I wanted to feel surprised by the next note. That was the thought behind the synth. And then we just played this song with the LA Phil. And I noticed the string players like playing the 16th note. So the first thing I said to them is like, the purpose of this was not to be played. It was to be unpredictable. And the response was, no, we are going to play it. Like they wanted to play it. And
wait, I want to show people though, because it's almost impossible to hear it in the mix. So I'll play it and then I'll solo it here.
'Cause you are the the piece of me. Didn't need chasing, still fighting. I don't
It's just a
know
tiny.
why.
Yeah, it's just a little
Every time
thing.
the vocal comes down, when the delay throw hits, you can hear it spark a little bit. And I just wanted it to feel different than the first time. I also don't like copy and pasting, so I wanted the second time to feel a little bit more exciting than the first time. So if I had made the song 2 years prior, that synth would have been like 4 dB louder, and I would have wanted everyone to hear it. But to me, sort of maturing in music production is to leave space for the things that matter, which in this part is the vocal. It's not my cool synth, which I love, right? But it's just there to give you a little excitement, a little sparkle.
The vocal performance in this is just so stellar. I mean, it
incredible.
really is.
'Cause you are the piece of me I wish I didn't need, chasing relentlessly, still fighting. I don't know why. If our love is tragedy, why are you my remedy? If our love's insanity, why are you my clarity?
Perfect melody. Like everything about that, the
It's really
vocals,
strong.
the delivery, everything. It's a perfect melody.
Thank you very much. And I think what partially makes this performance so strong, because if I analyze it with my now 15 years or however long this was ago, I would have changed a lot of things about it. Because now I'm a bit more of a perfectionist. This was still in the beginning stages of me even working with vocals, right? I wasn't used to comping vocals. This is probably my second or so vocal I've ever comped myself. So this is like new territory for me. What I think makes this so special in retrospect, and my inexperience back then probably led to it, her vocal, this is like maybe you could argue a semitone or two too high for her, but this is the key of the song. And I wasn't gonna reproduce the whole song in another key, which with electronic music isn't as easy as pressing one button. There's like a desperation in her voice.
There's so much passion from it. Desperation,
It's-
absolutely.
in a good way.
In a good way, because it's at the top.
And you really believe it.
Yes,
And
100%.
I think that's kind of, maybe if I had done this song 15 years later, I would have heard the sort of struggle and I would have just lowered it, probably. But I think the fact that it stayed where it is and I was like, it has to be this key, honestly, I wouldn't have had time to reproduce it in another key. The tools 15 years ago were not what they are today. It would have taken me ages.
Okay,
And
so the other thing, I don't mean to interrupt, but
No, it's
the
okay.
key that the song is in with this, that it starts on this B flat minor 11 chord, okay? I don't have perfect pitch, but I recognize it has this, the flat key of it has there's a sadness to it. And I don't know, it's just kind of a thing that I feel when I hear, I just love the key that this B flat minor 11, that first chord in the verse, when I hear that, I'm like, oh yeah. I hear those flat keys and stuff, and it just has a certain melancholy vibe to it.
That's a very interesting perspective, because if I had to guess, most EDM songs in the world, the majority is probably in F minor, if I had to guess. Because F is a really safe note in the sub-range to hear on speakers that aren't incredible. If you have an amazing sound system that goes really low, you can probably get down to a C. I don't know if you can safely, but you know, maybe an E will still be totally fine. F is really safe everywhere, on every speaker. We're talking about the sub-range, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the exact hertz, but so during the time I was making the song, just a lot of songs were in F minor, and there was two considerations. Like, this is real EDM talk, but like back then it was, what am I wanting for other people to be able to mix in and out of it? Because F minor is going to be my best chance to get in and out, or people may play it. That was a thought I had. The other thought is the key of the kick F, or are we deviating? Like, I have always done it in a way where my kick is not in the key of the song.
Okay.
Which I'm pretty sure this kick is probably in G, but in the sub-range, it's a kick that boom, goes down. Where is the exact point where you would argue that's the note of the... I think it just doesn't matter, unless you have an 808 that is one flat note, where of course it does matter. But in an EDM song where you duck it out and replace it with a bass, it does not matter. Wherever the key of the kick feels the best is where it belongs.
Of course, you do have an F minor in the song, because
well, in the whole bridge,
Yeah, because the bridge goes to F. That's right.
Yeah.
But here's your
For a
F
split
minor,
second,
right.
yeah. Yeah.
And so that being the 5 of the first chord in the song, F, probably works great for people to use parts of it or to transition to something like this.
It was the easiest song to get in and out of, just in the time period where a lot of songs were in that key. It sounds really silly, but sort of EDM was developing at the time.
Fascinating.
A lot of songs were, we call it 4A, right? This is our F minor, and then your 5th is going to be the 3 or the 5A, which would be the C. But I'm pretty sure when we wrote the chords, we recorded the chords, and I still do this, by the way. I will have my chords, and then I will just go up and down and see if they make you feel differently, and they do. I know there's theory to it, right? And I kind of read a little bit about it. Obviously, we're not in a perfect tuning, right? So the discrepancy in the small second between the C and the F is a little bit smaller or bigger than the others, so not all steps are equal, right? So in this case, it's like if I change the key, it's technically not the same. If we have fully even pitch and each semitone is identical, then maybe it doesn't make a difference. I don't know the exact theory to it, but when I have a chord progression, I just go down, it's like this feels different and this feels different. It also depends on the sound you're using, of course, because some sounds just can't reproduce, some synths can't reproduce the bass as much, and if you know you're gonna go down to this note, this is the lowest you're gonna go, then make sure that lowest note still sounds good, and then your range is from there upwards. So sometimes we'll just go up and down and be like, this sounds really good, and then the song goes into that key.
Okay, so one of the tracks that I have on here is from your new record here. That's the song "Out of Time." I'm going to open that up here. Now that is in, I want to say that's in D.
I think it is in D. Written in C.
Written
Started
in C.
in C, ended up in D.
Okay, let's hear.
Somebody help me, I might lose my mind like a melody looping on repeat. Rather be chasing sunlight, dreamy-eyed like a memory fading endlessly. Finally hit my limit, get me off this ride before I'm out of time. Before I'm out of time. Tell me it's over. The cycles of highs and lows pull me in closer. Say that you won't let go. Finally.
Okay, in this verse part, you have all these answer parts that happen here that are that beautiful that follow the vocal melody
The call and response.
call and response,
Yeah.
right?
Somebody help me, I might lose my mind like a melody.
Is that triggered off the vocal? Is that
It is.
an
It's
effect on
just
the
a
vocal?
delay. Yeah. So basically, I duplicate the vocal,
and
shift
it's just
it.
really lo-fied.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like a manual delay, if you will.
Once again, this is a song that can be played on the guitar. Now, do you have guitars in here?
It
You
is,
have
yeah,
some
this one-
guitars.
this
Yeah, you
one
have
has some
guitars. Okay, so let's see what the guitars do here.
So I'm not a guitarist, so this is all I can do.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, if I just solo the vocal with...
Like a melody, looping on repeat. Rather be chasing sunlight.
that orchestra in there.
Like a memory, fading endlessly. Finally hit my limit. Get me off this ride before I'm out of time.
Now, these things are just separating any of these parts. It sounds beautiful like it is. How do you know when a song is done?
Oh, the magic
Right?
question. Well, this song proves that I don't know the answer to that question because I started this song in 2015. So this is a decade before it came out.
Okay.
I bought my first house in LA. I just finished True Colors, my album. And this is the very first song I wrote in the new house. Again, I think the reason it felt good to play on the guitar is because it's written on an instrument, which is the vast majority of my songs. I usually write a chord progression. I save it, I send it to Dave, he keeps it in the pool of chord progressions, and eventually I use them to make a song. So this was a chord progression I loved, but at the time my music wasn't as musical. It wasn't like bad music by any means, but this is on a little bit more of a theatrical level, and I just felt like it was out of place back then. But I loved it. I turned it into an intro for many years, and it's always stuck around, and I've always loved it. And then Telos became the album where I can showcase every side of me and feeling comfortable doing it. So this was like the perfect sort of DNA of Telos, was everything that has influenced me in my life to be in this album. And so when do I know that the song is done? To me, what was the key to this song was the vocal. The vocal unlocked a lack of energy, in particular in the chorus, that I wasn't sure why I couldn't solve. Because I thought this was going to be instrumental for 10 years.
Okay.
I didn't really hear a vocal in this. I've always thought this is kind of going to be the instrumental song of the album. And I think, talking back about sort of becoming a little bit more mature and leaving space for things that matter more, I realized that in the chorus, the very first time B sang the chorus melody, I was like, this immediately was like, check mark. I can finish the song tomorrow. I know exactly what was missing. It was the human desperation in the voice that just has unlocked so much for me. And it wasn't the synth or the missing guitar. And this is probably the most dense song I've ever made in my life. There's so many layers when you go through them. You hear them every time afterwards when you soloed them, but all together you just get an emotion of like, it gives you a little classical, especially in the second half, it gives you a little jazz. It definitely gives you some EDM in the drop. It gives you a little rock because there's a lot of guitars.
Yeah.
And the rock has more distorted guitar. So the chorus, sorry, or the drop, I guess depends on what you call it. So this is like the whole accumulation of all my influences in one song, I would say.
Okay, when I'm listening to this and playing the stems, for the people that aren't seeing what I'm playing here, I'm playing the stems of the track. When you go and you stem out a mix, do they go through the same bus compression and things like that?
Yeah.
How do you do that so that it plays coherently and it sounds like the mix without anything on it?
It doesn't. The truth is it's close, but it's not perfect.
Yeah, okay.
So all this is the mix, just without the plugins on the master chain. So the way I produce is I mix while I produce.
Yep.
So I never go through a mixing stage. I've never sent my song. There's, I think, one or two songs in my life that I did mix myself.
So you have your bus compression and things like that on all the time as you mix. You mix into it, right?
Yes. I only disable it when I need to play in things so that I can get the latency down to 32, 64, whatever I can get away with.
Yep.
But overall, Ozone, always on since 2015.
What is it? Ozone 11 now? Ozone 13? What
We're
is it?
on
11?
I believe it's 11.
11, yeah.
It's incredible now. It's so good. It saved my life so many times when making these like live edits for drums and just quick the AI mastering, and I can play that song that same night. Incredible. I mean, I've always used Ozone. But I essentially have my preset that I have made many years ago. I use it on every single song, and my two stages are a clip stage first,
Yep.
and then a maximizing, limiting, whatever you want to call it, my ozone preset. Now the clip stage I like because there's two ways to get things loud or chopped, which is clipping, the more radical way, or limiting, or maximizing, or compressing, which sort of will round off the edges and give you a slightly different result, a little more washy, a little less clear.
Yeah.
So the balance between the two main levels that we're looking at in all of my music is how much clipping do I do versus limiting. And to me, it's gonna be mostly clipping. I just prefer it for electronic music. The claps can be crazy loud in clipping, 10 dB over zero, easily 15 dB over zero, and it's completely fine.
Yeah.
You just got to use your ears.
You're talking
So
about no digital distortion. That
if you don't hear it, it's fine.
Yeah.
Even if you hear it, as we talked about
So do you
in
look
certain
at?
cases.
So you're not looking at the meters
No,
necessarily.
no. My meters don't even mean anything because I sometimes have a gain plugin. And we should also clarify, it does depend if you're in floating or not. Like
Yeah.
Pro Tools for a long time, it's now in floating,
floating,
right?
yeah, 30
Back in
bit.
the day it wasn't, which means that essentially when you're floating, you can just throw a plugin on and you're 50 dB distorting and you just turn it down the master and then you're fine.
Right.
Or sorry, you put the plugin before and it's fine. So it's you kind of in a balance. So looking at my meters oftentimes doesn't even give me any information because my basses will all be in the red because I'm turned down later on.
Yeah.
So sometimes I just keep the balance where it is. Almost forces me to listen.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at the
And
meter.
you're listening to hear any type of audible digital distortion.
Audible distortion, whether side chains start messing things up, whether the dynamics are too squished through the mastering chain, which it usually doesn't. Usually my mixes are very dynamic and they go through that.
How
and then
much? How much compression is there? How much limiting is there on the
from
mix
my
bus?
side?
Yeah.
Basically, I go a little too far and then I go a step back.
Yeah.
Right. So I try to get my things as loud as possible, and I then get them mastered as they already are compressed. So
Okay.
typically your regular mastering engineer, mixing engineer, probably rightfully so, will tell you to deliver files that are dynamic, 3 dB headroom, whatever. Essentially the story with me is that I used to do this until I made Beautiful Now. And Beautiful Now, I tried a new ozone preset and I made the whole song in it. And as I choose my sounds, I didn't realize how drastic of a preset this was. And the result of it was that I couldn't undo it.
Right. It shaped the color of everything.
The
right?
song sounded awful.
Yeah.
Like essentially it shaved so many harsh mids
Yeah.
that when I turned it off, it became like a really
Yeah.
terrible sound. So
Yeah.
I talked to my mastering engineer and it's like, I don't think this is possible. I can't undo it.
Yeah.
Can you try to master it after I've already sort of mastered it?
Yes.
And I think Beautiful Now is one of my best sounding, punchy songs and very clean. So when I got that result back, I was like, oh, I don't need to deliver completely like clean files. I can deliver what I love and he can make it better.
Do you just try and get everything as close to where it's going to be, and then whatever little
Yeah.
bit needs to happen can happen in mastering?
Yes, I get my mixes, like I said, I mix while I produce, so the mixing phase doesn't exist. When I set the last note, I'm usually done, and I
Yeah.
listen back, and I listen in my car, I listen on my phone, and then I make slight adjustments, because sometimes you hear things on your phone that you didn't hear in the
Yeah.
expensive studio. You know how that goes. Now, I will say, I've encountered a lot of scam mastering. I'll just say it plain out, where I got a file back, and I was like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. It sounds the same. And it was the same, just louder, like quite literally. It's like, well, this is like one of the biggest, I'm not gonna name anybody, but it was a very popular mastering engineer.
Okay.
I was like, oh my God, and he's done so many records and he just turned my mix up. So part of me was like, maybe this is a compliment to my mix, that everything sounded good and it didn't need much, but it also made me question the whole mastering world.
Yeah.
And then I will admit that my songs mastered sound better than mixed, which I would argue
Okay.
most of the cases is probably the opposite. Mastering is like, how much worse is my song gonna sound when it comes back in exchange for loudness? That's not the case with me. I actually think there is something happening, and I don't know exactly what is going on in the mastering process, but I do think there's a glue that comes back and it has a little bit more punch, and I think that I could never do this myself.
This is so interesting what you just said. I want to go back to it. Like, what am I sacrificing
For volume?
for volume, right? What tonally essentially is what you're saying. This is like, and not you, but for most people, it's like, okay, we're going to go to mastering and I'm going to sacrifice something
Yeah.
tonally or whatever, just to get that extra.
That's my experience.
Yeah.
That was my experience.
I think it's very common. It's a
Yeah.
very common experience.
But I should mention, it doesn't have to be this way. And it just took me to find the right mastering engineer to realize that there are things I can't do. Maybe I could learn them, but I also think it's amazing that there are people who are so good at things that I can just trust them to do something. And I can focus on the things I'm really good at. And I've never been good at mastering. I've mastered plenty of my own music. And when I make edits for live that, I don't release, I master them myself as well. I'm not as good at it. I really
So
lack.
who is somebody that you use for mastering now?
Mike has mastered every song of mine since 2014, I believe.
Okay.
Mike Marsh. I will wait until Mike is available because he is the glue to my music, to my mixes. He understands how I make my mixes, completely transparently showing him everything I put on it so that he can adjust for it.
Do you go to mastering or not?
In person,
Yeah.
I would lose my mind. Definitely
you
don't.
don't-
I lose
you-
my mind already,
Right.
and I'm not even there. So Mike just sends me, essentially I work till like midnight or 1 a.m. because that's roughly when he gets in the studio. He's in the UK.
Okay.
So it's kind of ideal because I work till late, I deliver the files, and I know like by the time I wake up, I will have them. I make detailed notes, and he's really good with recalling detailed notes. And we usually go through 3 to 4 revisions until we land in a place that we love. And the Talos album was kind of complicated because almost the entire album is connected. So it's really kind of one song. And I didn't want there to be any stops, which sometimes is easier than other times. So we essentially made 10 full-length versions that I then had mastered individually, then brought them back in myself, and then decided where each song best transitions so that they make sense from when you just listen to the one song and still together. So it's a little bit of a pain. Certain transitions happened within the mastering, not actually within the production. Certain guitars I would record but then add only in the mastering phase because in my mind, in my logic, they're not actually part of the song, they're part of the journey. The journey happens.
They're part of the transitions, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't want them to be within the individual song. Because
it.
why would I introduce a guitar
Yeah.
at the end of a song that then stops?
Okay, so I want to play another song that is a massive hit of yours.
Take a seat right over there. Sat on the stairs, stay or leave. The cabinets are bare and I'm unaware of just how we got into this mess. Got so aggressive. I know we meant all good intentions. So pull me closer. Why don't you pull me close? Why don't you come on over? I can't just let you go. Oh, baby. Why don't you just meet me in the middle? I'm losing my mind just a little. So why don't you just meet me in the middle? In the middle. Baby, why don't you just meet me in the middle? I'm losing my mind just a little. So why don't you just meet me in the middle? In the middle. Oh.
This section here, there's basically only a couple things. Sounds like a vocoder or something that's in there.
It is, yeah.
Is it a vocoder?
It's, I think, a clock and 3 types of vocal. So the vocal is the vocal, of course.
Yep.
And then we're going to be missing like the harmonic fullness of the
Yep.
chords, and we're going to be missing the bass. What kind of makes this part special is that they're all vocals.
Yeah.
So they're 2 different vocoders. One is just the bass vocoder.
Okay.
So they're placed its separate note. It's probably separated that way. And one is the chord vocoder.
Yeah, well, let me solo these here so that people can hear what you're talking about here.
Why don't you just meet me in the middle? I'm losing my mind just a little.
I mean, it really makes up for the.
It does.
Makes up for the bass.
It has
is
a lot
the
of stuff.
bass.
It is the bass in this section.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's cool
It's
because
the chords and the bass.
the chords and the bass. So this, I don't know if it was 2 separate stems or if this is consolidated.
was
but
consolidated.
it is technically 2 separate
Yeah.
layers. And so I focused on one layer just being the balls,
Yeah.
being the bass, and then being the harmony, the chords. And then obviously the vocal is the vocal, but it does make you feel like everything is there.
Yes.
And what is cool is that, the frequency spectrum you can reach with just the vocalist is somewhat limited.
Yeah.
If you have a full choir, you can get pretty far.
Yeah.
But with the electronic elements, I can really boost the sub of a vocal
Yeah.
in the vocoder. It gives me a lot more harmonics.
The vocoder, yeah, because it introduces those extra harmonics, that distortion really,
Yeah,
and
it is.
it makes it so full sounding. It's almost, honestly, it's almost like distorted electric guitars.
It's not far off.
Yeah.
And it kind of allows you for we'll just call it the pre-chorus. I always struggle, what's the drop and what's the chorus, but
Yeah.
it allows your big sing-along moment to technically be just vocals. I mean, there's a snap going on in the background
Yeah.
to just keep track of time, but the whole thing is a vocal. So the song came out, and essentially it was pretty clear what the sing-along part was going to be. It was like given.
Right.
This is the part everybody's going to sing because that's all there is.
Okay, when you're hearing it on a different, I'm playing through these Adam audio speakers here. When you hear it, you've heard this song a million times,
Yeah.
right? But when you hear it on different systems in different rooms, do you always think, oh, that sounds good on that? Or
Well, this sounds really different because I think you're playing back the stems.
yeah, so I'm
the
playing back the stems,
are
which is not
missing
what the
a
actual,
lot of compression.
which is not, let me actually play the track so people can actually hear what the difference is.
Take a seat,
It's much more together.
right over there, sat on the stairs, stay or leave. The cabinets are bare, and I'm unaware of just how
More
we
presence
got
to the
into this
vocal.
A lot more
mess.
highs,
Got
yeah.
so
Yeah.
aggressive. I know we meant all good intentions, so pull me closer. Why don't you pull me close? Why don't you come on over? I can't just let you go. Oh, baby, why don't you just meet me in the middle? I'm losing my mind just a little. So why don't you just meet me in the middle? In the middle. Baby, why don't you just meet me in the middle? I'm losing my mind just a little. So why don't you just meet me in the middle? In the middle. Oh, take a step.
A lot less dynamic.
For a minute.
How do you get the bass and the kick drum to be so fat?
Be so fat. Well, I think sidechaining is a key component. We mentioned it previously.
Yeah.
But you obviously want your kick to punch. So you can't take sub or bass out of the kick. And the right sidechain into the kick for them to be one thing, again, not a separated thing, is really critical. One thing you can do is if
Do you high pass your kick at all, or high pass your bass at all, or no?
So there's exceptions when a bass is playing specific notes and the kick is sort of just a pulse behind it.
Yeah.
I will sometimes take the sub out of it.
When you say the sub, what frequency would you say?
Well, it depends on the bass that is playing the sub.
Yep.
It just kind of depends. So the general rule of thumb is I always say high cut and low cut, so I had to think about what you just said. But
Yeah, low cut.
I don't low cut my kicks ever.
Okay.
I leave them always in full spectrum. If I want more attack, I'll bump the attack. If something is annoying, I'll shave that off. Sometimes less highs, or of course completely high cut if I just want like in the second verse of this song.
Yeah.
You will just have like sort of the feel of it, not the attack. But in certain cases where I want the with the bass playing the main note, I will maybe low cut it to, it can be like 150, can be 200, and the bass really replaces the kick. The kick is then just added onto it, but the easiest way to sort of visualize it is you have your kick, you have your bass, you do your sidechain however you think it sounds best, and you bounce them as one file, you bring it back in, and you do see, is there like a dip, is there like, visually you will be able to see if there's a hole.
And do you not want to have a hold there?
I mean, I would recommend not having one.
Yeah.
Because again, you don't want it to feel like you hear a kick
that
and a
you're
bass
pulsing
and you don't
like
want
that.
the
You don't want
I don't want the
audible
pulse.
pulsing like that.
So you want it all to feel like one thing. And ideally, if a song is well produced, in my opinion,
Yeah.
to my taste.
Yeah.
I say this because a great example is Skrillex, who does not follow my rule at all, and he sounds arguably significantly better than I do. It's just that he has a different mentality when it comes to sidechain. For him, it's an effect. For me, I just don't like the feeling of the pulsing, so I want it to be masked. And so I don't want there to be a huge bump when they're, like, I don't want the sidechain to be longer than it has to be.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that. It's not musical to my kind of music. So
Yeah.
Cubase is a little easier because you can have a kick, you have your bass sample, and you put them over each other, you press X, it crossfades it. And then you drag one down to another track, and it keeps each individual fade in and fade out the same.
Okay.
And then you can start manipulating them individually, and then
Interesting.
but I'm sure other DAWs do it too. It's just that I've been with Cubase since the very beginning. But ultimately, use your ears. You want it to feel like one thing. You don't want it to feel like a kick and a sub, and they're kind of like wiggling around. If you're struggling to hear what's going on, I would recommend bouncing them as one file and zooming in. And you sometimes will see your kick attack because it's like squiggly lines. And then you will see your body, you will see your tail, and sometimes you see, oh, there's a little bit of a dip. Now, what you can sometimes do in certain DAWs is you just draw that dip back up.
Yeah, draw the
bounce it
volume
again, see how
automation.
does it look now. So sometimes that's how I make my kicks. It will just be separate layers. It'll be like a hi-hat layer, like a puffiness, a white noise, an attack, a sub, a body. You have your 6 layers. You love them. If it's perfect, bounce it as one kick. Put it in your sample library. That's how I do it. I have a sample library of every single sound that has ever made my songs. So I can always say I want the 365 snap, and I just drag it back in. So make your sounds, sample them out so you have them forever.
Okay, the vocal on here, does this have any distortion on it?
Oh, I hope not. I mean, the vocal shouldn't distort. Sometimes it'll have some saturation.
That's what I mean, saturation.
Oh, just to cut through?
Yeah.
I can, if you play it back, I can tell you. I mean,
The kitchen floors are wet.
definitely not the verse.
I was wondering, in sections that are really dense, if you add anything like that.
Yeah, like a decapitator oftentimes helps cut through. I will add that if I have to.
Does Decapitator, do they have the same plugins in Cubase? I don't use Cubase at all.
Oh yeah, it's all external plugins.
Okay, give me some of the plugins other than the synth plugins, but what are some of the compression or EQ or saturation plugins that you use?
I can actually, if I can grab my laptop, I can give you an actual list. I brought my laptop. So.
Nice.
Okay, so I can tell you some of my, and you probably know most of these, but my absolute favorite plugin ever is Gullfoss. Are you familiar with Gullfoss?
Of course.
Okay.
I got it when it first came out.
Really?
I met the guy that...
Oh, really?
Oh my God, I've had it forever, for years.
I mean,
I've had it.
Gullfoss is the easiest way to
unscrew up a sound.
Or like when I play an old song.
Yeah.
Like a remake, you throw that to 100% or more, and it's incredible. Generally speaking, I try to use as little effects as possible.
Yeah.
Unless it's in a creative way where I will basically make 10 tracks, and I have my little experimental folder, which is when I
Anton,
don't know.
how do you even see this? Now,
Because it's small. I usually have it on a big screen.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't usually actually work on the laptop. Okay, Corrosion is the new plugin.
Okay.
I am obsessed with, and I have been putting on virtually, I'm just gonna throw something in here. The short version of Corrosion that I can explain what it does is if you were to hold a piece of paper in front of a woofer and it vibrates and it's like a flutter, it is a distortion plugin. And I believe it used to be an internal FL Studio distortion, if I remember the story of this correctly. And it is amazing. You can pretty much put it on any bass and it improves it. It's one of those plugins you can throw on anything and it just makes it better. It gives you a little bit of a distortion that's mostly in the high mids, highs, and you can drag that XY curve anywhere you want. And some of the last songs I've made, the vast majority of them, I threw that on every bass and I was like, oh, we're good to go automatically. There's a plugin called Tornado that I use when I don't know what I want. Sometimes I know something is needed, something is lacking, and I don't really know what it needs. That's why I have my experimental folder. And I just go in there, I take a random plugin, and I see what I can come up with from there. I'm just gonna go through the list.
Okay.
Decimor.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're familiar, but this is one of my favorite bit crushers. I've been using it too much.
Okay.
But what's cool about it, sometimes bit crushers tend to sound...
This.
Okay, this is incredible. Sometimes bit crushers tend to sound really cold and digital. This has a really, really clean, dry, wet, and also really good presets. And you can just add warmth and fuzziness to something without it sounding really cold and like almost like sparkling water, like bubbly. This makes it like really, really tender. So this is a really good way to give warmth and highs to anything, even a vocal. So we were talking about Decapitator on a vocal.
Yeah.
Another thing you can do on a lead, for example, when you have a bunch of doubles, you don't do that to the doubles, but you give a little bit, like 10% bit crusher to just the lead vocal, and it will cut so much more. Wow. And it makes it, if anything, a little quieter. You get a little bit of headroom, but you get a lot of clarity out of it. So sometimes I'll add a tiny bit of bit crushing to one lead vocal just so it could cut through without needing a lot more space in the mix. In terms of delay, timeless is pretty much what I always use. I don't know if you mess around with it, but the ducking feature is so good.
Yeah.
If anybody's ever not used it, but essentially it allows you to, if you turn the ducking up, it will finish your main vocal. And when your vocal is quiet, it will bring up the delay. Because if you have too much delay, too much mix, it just kind of muddies up the whole thing, unless you want delay everywhere. This allows you to have a really clean variation of it, which you used to have to do manually with a sidechain, and now it's just in here. I've just been starting to use Bloom.
I've seen Bloom,
Bloom is really awesome.
Yep.
You can really squash stuff here. And the opposite of that, I believe it's the same guys who made Sooth. I love the Pi.
Oh yeah, Pi compressor, yeah.
I love the Pi. I usually use it on these like Moog kind of plucks like in Clarity. It usually cuts a little bit of the highs out. I think that's what's going on behind the scenes. It doesn't tell you. It's a really warm compression and soft, unless you want it to be crazy. But I usually use the Pi on like those kinds of plucks, OTT.
Yeah.
Incredible. There's also a version called MoTT. Have you tried Uber Loud? Okay, this is one you need. You can either go for one band if you just want to squish something. You can visually see what it does.
Yeah.
And how much it's squishing, and you can turn it into 2 or 3 band mode, which is probably the best way to go. It is kind of like Gullfoss, but a little bit more focused on a band. So if you just have a song, you're like it's lacking a little bit of low end and punch, this is really all you have to do.
It's interesting, like the Gullfoss, for example, I always think of that as, it's almost like AI or something like that. It's like,
AI before we started saying the word AI.
Right?
I mean, a lot of these things are AI, right? They've always been AI.
Yeah.
In our world, a lot of the plugins that you don't fully manually set are AI. They're real-time tracking your frequency response. I mean, you could argue that a regular multi-band compressor, to a certain extent,
is like
AI,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You pick a band and you tell it, when this happens, you do that by this much in this range. I mean, now you just call it AI and you probably double your sales. I'm assuming, I'm not sure. To me, Gullfoss is a little bit more advanced.
Yes.
It is like the equivalent of having infinite amounts of really tiny EQ bands that all constantly listen to like, am I too much? Am I too little? And I adjust in real time. It won't master your song. It won't mess.
But it will fix a sound.
Absolutely. And what I oftentimes do before if I need any drastic changes in a song, to just know if I'm in the right ballpark, is I just crank it really high.
Yeah.
That tells me where I'm off, like what's lacking. I usually have to turn it to 20, 30%, 10%, somewhere in that neighborhood, and I leave it like that and I send it to mastering. But if I feel like I need to crank it to 120, because one thing I stopped doing is referencing. I used to reference every mix to previous songs of mine, to other songs I love. I completely stopped doing that. I make each project what it wants to be, and Telos naturally ended up being more warm and less high and less loud, significantly less loud and much more dynamic, and I like it that way. But I didn't, if I had compared it to everything else, I probably would have cranked the highs because I felt like I don't have enough, right? So if you want the information, Gullfoss is an amazing way to just crank it really high, look really quickly, and then you can even leave it on, or you gain something from that information. And of course, the cleanest way, if you have a massive gap in the highs, instead of cranking the highs and putting them on absolutely everything, is to figure out what musically and harmonically is lacking, and either add a hi-hat, a shaker, add a synth, add white noise. There's an infinite amounts of ways to plug that hole. Yeah, I mean, it's magical. Actually, I do want to show you, in case you don't, you probably do know because they make some of the best plugins ever. I have a whole Synaptic folder. Are you familiar with their plugins?
Yes.
I actually think they have a new one that I haven't tried yet, but for anybody who's not familiar with Synaptic or Zynaptic, that one, specifically Adaptive Verb, is magical because one issue, let's just say you have a scenario where you have long piano notes and you want each piano note to have a long reverb. The way I've always done it in the past is I would have one note, heavy reverb, bounce. Next note, heavy reverb, bounce, and then you plug them together because you don't want one reverb to stomp the next note.
Right.
Because that's not the right note of the reverb, right?
Correct.
So what Adaptive Verb does, it's once it hears that the note has changed, it automatically pitches your reverb into the correct pitch of that note. And there is a They call it mode track, but essentially it's a dry wet for pitch, not just the length of reverb. So sometimes, for example, one thing I do when I feel like certain parts are empty, maybe in that verse 2 of the middle, I use this, I don't recall because it was quite a long time ago, but I will basically bounce the chords at 100% wet, at 100% pitch track. And it creates sort of a kind of pad that always plays the right notes because it's based off of your chords.
Yeah.
And then you fill your mix with that as much as you feel like it needs that void filled. If you just have a little too much space, right?
Yeah.
You can then put corrosion on it if you want to distort that a little bit. In my case, that's what I would do. Or if you want less or more. But essentially, this is a really easy way to fill the void without having to figure out, well, what am I going to be playing harmonically to fill that void? You already have your synth.
Yeah.
You just run it at 100% wet, bounce it out, and then you mix it back in. And it's sometimes just really kind of... I've done that with vocals, which it was really, really cool, where you can almost have an infinite reverb, and you don't have to manually do it because it just will pitch it and ramp it up when there's nothing and come back down when there is much. It's a really cool... I would call this AI to a certain extent. I mean, I hate those 2 letters the most, probably my least favorite vowels. But you know, you know what I mean.
Okay, so very last thing I want to ask you is, songs done, who makes all the stems? Do you have...
oh, yeah, Skinny.
Skinny does it. You don't even want to see it again, right?
I never want to see it again, especially a song like Out of Time that I've been working on for essentially throughout 10 years. And sometimes some parts are in Cubase 9, some are in 11, some are in 12.5, and they go through years and years, and sometimes I can't open plugins. That's the thing I have the least patience with. I'm very slow at producing, so it's completely normal for me to take years for a song. They're all like 3 years old when they come out.
Yeah.
And sometimes you know how it is. Plugins stop working.
Stop working, or they don't even make them anymore.
Or they don't, or they get bought by another company, and like that's the worst. And my goal with my studio, with my production, with my laptop, which is literally DJing, producing everything in one, is for my workflow to be as fast and easy as it can be. Which was a perfect example of where I would yell at Skinny and be like, Skinny, make this work. It's not playing sound. And I don't even know why, because when it comes to technology and setting things up, I don't even want to know about it. I want to focus on creating emotions, and I don't want to worry about that. And I also don't want to worry about stems, but essentially how we do it is that the goal is for there to be a screenshot of my mastering chain.
Yep.
And then the tracks that you don't have the mastering chain on, right?
No.
Okay, so they're still very close. And I believe they probably individually run through the same mastering chain, but they don't really do 100%.
But it still doesn't glue it together in the same way.
It doesn't glue it together, but if you throw that preset on, it will essentially get almost back to where it started.
Yeah.
Stems-wise, I have no patience. I can't do it. Skinny will go through my songs. He will cleanly stem everything out, label everything, BPM, key, put everything in folders, and then we store it online. So if I ever need access, like somebody is like, hey, I want to play a song, can you send me the acapella?
Yeah.
Not that anyone even needs that anymore, because I feel like with AI, you actually have everything.
Yeah, but
it's there. And it's perfectly clean.
Perfect.
You know,
yeah, where you don't have any
artifacts.
Any artifacts, yeah.
Yeah, so Skinny does all that, and then it's all nicely labeled. I hate organization. I'm so unorganized when it comes to like storing my music stuff. Sometimes I get overwhelmed because I have so many projects, and I have like Out of Time has various versions of it. Basically, songs started creating, and then I went into 2 different paths for 2 different things. It became a theme song for a show in one version of it, and it became Out of Time for Telos. So then there were infinite amounts of versions, and I have no overview. I'll be like, Skinny, I made this guitar, I made this thing, can you please find it and bring it? And then I leave. I make myself a coffee that I've learned how to make on YouTube through watching long-form content, exactly. And I come back down, and then everything's ready to go for me.
Okay, when you go to the show, are you using this computer?
I bring it with me to make my sticks.
Yep.
So my record box, which is the software I use to prep my sticks.
Yep.
All my songs are all on this computer. I put them on the stick, and then I plug them in, and then that's what I get to play. My stick essentially has everything.
Yep.
But for each show, I make a separate folder that I plan to stick to if I can.
Yeah.
Sometimes the DJ before me will play a song that I was going to play, and then obviously I'm not going to play it. I essentially make playlists that I try to stick to if everything goes well, especially because everything's connected to light show, fireworks, you name it. I don't want to mess everybody up.
Yep.
And I've already spent time prepping something, so I want to stick to the plan. And if I have to, I'll deviate, of course. But yeah, everything's this. It's crazy. I used to have the cheese grater, we call it, the Big Mac.
Mac, yeah.
And now this is faster.
Oh, yeah. I have the
it's
cheese grater
great.
in there.
You still use it?
And I do use it, but this is way faster.
It's so much faster.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it when I got it. My dream was to always have something with me. Ironically, the first time I could have used to show it examples, it doesn't work, of course, but the fact that we can produce everything that we just heard.
Well, and
on here.
they added all the ports back on everything now.
Thank God.
I know
mean,
that was the big thing too.
It's kind of genius to take something away and give it back to you, and you feel like
Right.
you were given something.
know, it's like-
but I'm just grateful that this is all I need. I mean, like I had the cheese grater just a few years ago, and this is faster. And I've only ran into Out of Time is actually the only song that I still can't play back. You can bounce it, but you can't hear it in real time in the session because it has tempo changes. And I've used a lot of superplate. Do you ever use superplate reverb? Probably my favorite reverb. Would also put that on the list. It is so incredible, but it's very CPU intensive. And I have it on every single track of the 40 choir vocals. And then as soon as the tempo change happens, it does not let me play it anymore.
Got it.
But so if they want to release one that's even twice as big and twice as fast, I'll take it.
I'm sure it won't be long. Anton, pleasure.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you so
for
much
coming
for
in.
having me. It's my
amazing.
pleasure. Thank you.